see all the new NFT projects, and just go to live in-person events and get to meet people that I hadn't gotten to meet in person before. So it was a good time.
Hi Kritika, how are you doing?
Good.
Hi Timothy, how are you?
Hi Rojas.
Not great.
Good to see you again.
Camera quality, but great meeting you. Timothy is going to remain pseudonymous. He says he does not want to use his videos, so I'm not pressing him to. Okay. But I think Rojas can give it a shot and see if you can convince Timothy.
No, I respect his privacy. So if he doesn't want,
already
maybe he's Satoshi and he doesn't want us to know.
Oops, yes, that too. But he went to an in-person event in Miami.
Okay.
So I think, the argument doesn't hold great. But yes, let's get started.
Exactly.
I'm going to go in the background. I'm going to go in the background.
I wish I had.
Go ahead. I think there's some lag, a little bit of lag.
From my side?
No, from Timothy's side. Both of us are syncing, and I think it's.
So maybe he's not on Earth. Maybe he's already moved to Mars or the Moon with Elon Musk. We don't know. We can only guess.
Timothy, I'd love for you to answer that. I'm not. I'm just going to listen and enjoy.
Oh, Timothy, are you in the Metaverse? He's not answering.
Awesome.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, he's able to hear us late.
Okay.
There's a bit of a lag.
Are we going live?
Yes, we're live.
We ready to go?
We're live already. So
You're breaking in and out a little bit, Kriti, if you're giving me instructions. I can't hear you. Just give me a thumbs up when you want to kick this off. I am in the Metaverse. We all are in the Metaverse as we speak right now.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. I think before we kickstart, a small introduction about Timothy as well. It's primarily going to be Timothy and Rojas interacting. But Timothy is all of us know Rojas. Rojas is our favorite person here, and he's leading the Wrapped Asset project, which he talks about in a lot of socials. And
can you hear me?
Yes, Timothy, we can hear you.
Excellent. All right, so let's kick off then.
Yeah, sure. So Timothy, I'm just giving a little bit of background to you. So Timothy is an organizational psychologist, and of course, I'll let him explain more. He does crazy things as a social multiversal do-gooder, roaming around on the metaverse. So would love for him to explain what he does. But he has a background in data science as well as organizational psychology.
All right.
A crazy combo put together. Awesome. Then let me go on the background and both of you all take over. I'm super excited for this.
You're talking on mute there, I believe.
No, Timothy, go for it. I think you should go ahead and start your conversation with Rojas. You have some, you can get started talking to Rojas about what you have in mind, and we can get the.
Yeah, thanks,
awesome.
Pretty. So, hey, everyone.
Timothy, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
Excellent. Hey, everyone. My name is Tim. So, as Kriti kind of alluded to, my background is in industrial organizational psychology, which basically means I'm a scientist that tries to study humans at work and figure out how to make work better for us and figure out how to make us better at work. So I'm very excited about this space in Web3, in particular DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. I'm working full-time in DAOs, and when I found out about the opportunity to interview Rojas, I got very excited because we have an expert amongst us. So Rojas is the chief blockchain architect of the Wrapped Asset project, and he is building the future money wallet in the hybrid finance blockchain. He also conducts the blockchain ADS course, and is the host of the Crypto with Rojas podcast. Rojas, you've authored the Cybercrime Investigation Manual, which has been referred to as the Bible for cybercrime investigators by the Times of India. His work expands past 18 countries, and he's investigated cybercrimes as data breaches for hundreds of organizations across these sectors. Rojas, how are you doing today?
Absolutely fine.
Fantastic. Now, I want to just kind of start this off with sort of a very broad question of, just how did you get in this space? How did you get into cybersecurity?
Sure. So I started off in the early 90s.
Kind of a follow-up to that is...
Okay. So I started off in the early 90s.
A follow-up to
that. I think there's a lag between what you're saying and what I'm saying. So please, I'll wait for you to complete the question.
Yeah, apologies. There is a bit of a lag. So if I'm talking over you, I think I'm delayed by about 5 seconds. So I was just going to ask, how did you get into cybersecurity? And then where were you in 2017 during the first bull runs? Kind of a two-part question.
Sure. So I started off as a hacker in the early 90s. And then in 99, I moved into the area of cybercrime investigation. And I've assisted the law enforcement agencies in 18 countries for various kinds of investigations. And I first came across Bitcoin in 2011 when I was helping investigate a case of the drug mafia using Bitcoin for payments. So that's how I got introduced to cryptocurrencies. And in 2016, I moved full-time into the space of blockchain and crypto. So about your question of what I was doing at 2017, honestly, I was not in the crypto field at that time. I was looking more towards enterprise blockchain, and I was helping a bunch of banks build various kinds of solutions on blockchain technology. But I wasn't into crypto at that time at all. So I didn't either make money at that stage, nor did I lose money at that stage. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And it's so funny. I feel like there's a lot of us that just, we were there during 2017, but we had absolutely no idea what was going on. We had this sort of this Ethereum thing that I hadn't really ever heard of. And suddenly it's going parabolic, and all of a sudden Bitcoin's worth thousands of dollars. It was a very weird sort of abrupt time. And I think for a lot of us, we were sort of just trying to understand sort of this phenomenon. So I guess that's a good kind of transition into sort of my next question is, obviously have this very unique perspective. So I'm just wondering, what are some of the major trends you're seeing sort of at the intersection of cybersecurity and DeFi? And what do people need to know about cybersecurity and DeFi? What do you want to tell them?
Sure. So you may have realized that of late, we regularly hear about platforms being hacked. Now, there are two main reasons that happens. One are conventional hacking attacks which take place, and somebody's private keys get compromised and a huge amount of crypto gets stolen. The other kind of thing is when the smart contracts behind a lot of the solutions today are not securely done. So there are a lot of people who do audits. Now, many times people don't get audits done, and even an audit is not a guarantee of anything. So these are the two reasons that a lot of the hackings or the crimes today happen. So like I said, one, where a private key is compromised, or the second, where your smart contract was bad and somebody managed to figure out a way of messing with it. Let's take an example of the first hack. So I think this was 2017, I'm guessing, when the DAO attack happened on Ethereum. So the world's first DAO started off, decentralized autonomous organization, and a lot of people put money into it. And the logic was that they would all vote on how that money would be invested. Somebody figured out a flaw in the programming of that smart contract and siphoned off a huge amount of money, $65 million of ETH at that time. Of course, today that ETH would be worth a lot more. Now, at that time, the entire community was wondering what to do, because there's nothing you can do in a blockchain to return people's money unless you roll back the blockchain. And that time, the industry was divided into two. Some people who said, let's roll back, and some people who said, how can we roll back? That kills the very purpose of a blockchain, which is supposed to be immune from such kind of things. It's supposed to be immutable. But unfortunately, it was rolled back. And at that time, Ethereum forked into two. And we had Ethereum Classic and the regular ETH, which we see even today. So Ethereum Classic is actually the original Ethereum, which did not roll back. And Vitalik's Ethereum is the new one, which is called ETH, but that's the one which is today at the $3,000 and $4,000, whereas ETC is really low. So that was the first and the biggest attack that we saw. And surprisingly, those attacks have not stopped. In fact, they're just increasing. Just this year, you may recall the Poly network being hacked. That was again very unique because for the first time we saw a hacker returning all the money. I don't know why he did it, but he returned all the money. So we're beginning to see a lot of such strange things happen. And I think it's important for people to know that when you put your money into a DeFi platform, one is the risk that you personally would get attacked. So you need to make sure your wallet, your keys are secure. Second, there is a risk that the protocol itself may get attacked. So these are the two things people need to bear in mind. And another thing I'd like to say, a lot of people think blockchains are not hackable. That's totally untrue. Way back in 2010, Bitcoin was hacked and some people created billions of Bitcoins. You know, we say that the number of Bitcoins is restricted to 21 million. At that time, people created billions. Then, of course, the thing was forked and they figured out the flaw, they fixed it, and a few hours later, it was settled. But the point is, please remember, there is not a single technology in the world that can never be hacked. So bear that in mind when you are investing in crypto. There are various ways in which you could end up losing your money. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. DeFi is risky, not financial advice. Do your own research. That is very interesting. I did not actually realize that there was sort of this attack where they were forking the code and creating billions of Bitcoin. Crazy stuff. So going off this thread, how are we going to improve cybersecurity in this space? I have one particular question in mind, but I'm curious sort of your broad take first. How do we improve cybersecurity in crypto?
Sure. So first of all, I think the investors need to be made a little more aware about how to keep your wallet secure. Another thing that all the smart contracts out there need to, they need to get them audited by proper people, who understand all the implications and they're able. And then thirdly, we need to develop a lot of templates. I believe if the industry comes together and a lot of open source templates are created, that would help to a great extent. Like today, if you want to create a standard token, say on Binance, there are ready-made templates available which have been tried and tested. And as a developer, you know that if I use this template, it's 99.9% it won't get hacked. So I think we need a lot more templates coming out into the market so that every developer or every startup doesn't need to go from scratch and create its own smart contracts. Because that's where the problem comes. When you look at the conventional world of programming, with the advent of libraries and templates and others coming in, a lot of the problems which we used to face earlier, say in the 90s, they're not there anymore. Because we've got these really good open source templates available, libraries, code snippets available. I think the same thing has to happen in crypto, and I'm sure over a period of time it will.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. Kind of talk about these templates, or what maybe I would refer to as kind of these primitives, or these software development kits, if you will, in DeFi. I think, for me, one thing that obviously is a hot talking point is this notion of ETH killers and sort of these alternative layer ones. I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of the sort of drama that was occurring in Twitter a few weeks ago from some of the layer one community, the alternative Ethereums, which were basically saying that Ethereum has abandoned its community, has abandoned its members, sort of alluding to the barrier to entry. Obviously, gas is very expensive right now. It's a very hard sort of money to use in everyday transactions for a normal user. So talk to me a little bit about cybersecurity in the context of alternative layer ones. Is that the solution? Do we just leave Ethereum, or do we not? How do we stay safe on the blockchain?
So now let's take an example of Solana, which is considered to be really fast. But a few weeks ago, it was down for about 18 hours. Now, the problem here is when we talk about blockchain, we're talking about decentralization. So ideally, only a few nodes should go down, but the entire blockchain was down. How do you explain something like that? That's a really scary situation. So no, I don't believe that these other newer blockchains are more secure. I would say Ethereum is probably a lot more secure because it's been tried and tested more. Like, why do I feel Bitcoin's the strongest and most secure protocol? Because ever since it went live in 2009 or 10, I forget exactly when, it's been constantly attacked. People have tried to hack it and very rarely have they succeeded. So the code has become more and more robust. Similarly, Ethereum's been around for a longer period of time. It handles $160 billion in TVL, or total value locked in DeFi. So the attacks are much more. So it's been battle tested. The others are too new. So we don't know tomorrow when an actual determined group of people decide to try attacking Polkadot or Solana, we don't know whether it's going to be able to handle that attack. So I think there's very little data for the newer blockchains. And I would probably trust Bitcoin and Ethereum more simply because they're older and have been tested much, much more. Having said that, I do get Ethereum is expensive. I personally prefer to use Binance today and Solana. But no, I don't think they're more secure. We don't know that yet. It's too early to comment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I think that the more decentralized you can have a platform, the more resilient it's going to be to cybersecurity issues, at least at my basic understanding, just from, if we have one node go down, but there's 5 up, right? Versus if there's just one centralized server that's running some of these alternative L1s. I think we sacrifice decentralization for speed. And in this industry, I don't think that's a good thing. So I want to kind of move on. I want to ask you a little bit more about improving cybersecurity, particularly with NFTs. Mm-hmm. So how do you think NFTs will improve cybersecurity? And will decentralized identity reduce security issues? How?
Okay. So NFTs are just ultimately another form. See, when we look at it from the blockchain's perspective, there's no difference between a fungible token and a non-fungible token. So for example, if I was to use the multi-chain framework and I'm creating an asset, if I give that asset a value of 1, I can call it an NFT. If I give it a value more than 1, we call it a fungible token. So technologically speaking, there is no difference between the two. So I don't think NFTs affect cybersecurity in any way. The only issue is they bring in certain new challenges where, because an NFT almost always is going to have some off-chain data, which has to be linked to it. So you're buying a piece of art, so maybe there's an unlockable content, which may be high resolution version of that, and that may be stored somewhere else on an IPFS, for example. That brings in new challenges, not at the blockchain level, but at the regular security level where that document is kept, and somebody may delete it, somebody may alter with it. So that brings in certain off-chain elements, doesn't really impact the on-chain elements. Other than that, I don't think NFTs have much to do with cybersecurity. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's interesting. So one example that kind of made me think of this question is the CEO of Twitter, who recently stepped down. I know Twitter has been kind of at the forefront of NFTs and social media, and one thing that's been discussed is having this blue checkbox, this verified profile pic, if you will, to where, yeah, you can right-click Save As my profile pic, but if you don't have that blue checkbox, you are not me. Right. So this whole notion of decentralized identity, do you think we'll see a future where people are essentially forging NFT pics and pretending to be sort of my metaverse identity? And if so, like, how are we, like, what are we going to do in those situations? How are we going to combat, right? Like, I guess the modern phishing email, right? Like the Web 2 sort of classic Web 2 cybersecurity breach is like that email you get and you click on it accidentally. Web 3, we now have like people pretending to be me with NFT pics. Like, what does that future look like to you?
Sure. So, I mean, the logic has always been simple. So I've been involved in the law enforcement industry for a very long time. And I've always realized that, see, crime goes where money goes. So if more and more people start to move into the metaverse and they start to spend on property there, criminals will move there. So I expect to see theft starting there very soon, where someone would come and steal your virtual clothes. So say you bought a really fancy pair of, I mean, let's say a jacket from Gucci, and somebody comes and steals it from you in the metaverse. So we're going to start to see all that. People may come and squat on the land that you've bought. So you bought some very expensive piece of land in decentralized, and somebody else comes and tries to build a home on it or squats on it. I'm sure we'll start to see all that coming, and definitely we will see people pretending to be someone else. I'm totally convinced that's going to be happening pretty soon. I mean, I already know that eve teasing or harassment of women is very common in the metaverse. So when a woman goes into the metaverse, she rather goes as a man. Because if she goes as a woman, suddenly there are going to be 10 people trying to harass her there and, trying to speak to her. So just the way it happens in the real world, it's beginning to happen in the metaverse. People are people, right? And when you put them into a digital environment, they become worse because they think they cannot be caught. Which is why people troll you more on social media, not in real life. People can go online and troll you as much as they want because they're not scared of getting caught. But most of them wouldn't have the courage to do that to your face in a physical environment. So I think the metaverse would make things far worse.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept. That are the real world consequences aligned with sort of the digital consequences? And it sounds like you're saying they're not.
They're not.
So in that sort of let's entertain that idea for a second. In that situation, if I sort of trespass on your virtual property in Decentraland, which I love that example. Am I being arrested, or is my Salthoran Lazy Lion, is my NFT being arrested, right? Is my wallet address being blacklisted? Am I stuck? Is my NFT in jail? What's happening to me?
Right. So let me give you an example. So I don't know if you've used Second Life, but my first experiment with Metaverse was in about 2003 when Second Life started. Now, Second Life allowed you to do most of the things that we would want to do in a metaverse. And Duran Duran, which was a popular rock group at that time, in about 2006, they did a rock show there also. Now, at that time, I remember there was a case where somebody in the real world had designed a jacket, a designer, a fashion designer. Somebody copied that design and made a virtual version of that jacket and was selling it in Second Life. The original fashion designer went to court, and the court held that whatever the rights that the designer has in the real world are automatically protected in the virtual world. So the person who had copied the design in the virtual world was made to pay a fine in the real world. So logically speaking, if your digital version harasses a woman inside the metaverse, then your real version could go to prison in the real world. I think that's the way the law would be interpreted.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense to me. It's going to be really interesting to see, these inevitable sort of cases play out and what precedents would be set. I feel like we probably went a bit fast for the audience, so let's back up just a little bit. What exactly is the metaverse?
Sure.
And how is it different from the internet? This is a question I get asked all the time. Tell me why the internet is different than the metaverse.
Okay.
What exactly is here?
So if you've seen the movie Avatar, so in that, I mean, it's a beautifully made movie, right? So there are times when the humans are interacting only with humans, and then suddenly they go into Pandora in this planet, and suddenly they look like those tall blue people. That's a classic example of what the metaverse is. See, today on the internet, it's a two-dimensional kind of an approach. Right now, I can see you or you can see me on a screen. It's not an immersive experience. Now imagine you're wearing some kind of a headset and suddenly there is no laptop in front of you. There is no plain two-dimensional Rohas Nagpal who you're talking to, but you see a three-dimensional version of me standing in front of you. And we can interact with each other. If we shake hands, we can feel that. When you shake hands with someone, the person squeezes your hand, you can feel that. If someone boxes you, you feel that pain. Now imagine you are able to replicate that in the virtual world, where you are able to see people in a 3D. You are able to actually touch and feel and hit each other and feel that vibration. That's what the metaverse is. An immersive experience where there is a digital avatar of you, and it's just like the movie Avatar. Imagine yourself on that planet. That's what the metaverse is supposed to be. Does that make sense?
This immersive experience. Yeah. I think that makes total sense. So I'm sure you're familiar with this story. Adidas recently has announced intentions of getting into the metaverse. There is a video, a leaked sort of video floating around of a Bored Ape yacht and somebody from Punk's Comics and some of these influencers just flying around in a Adidas track suit. What are the implications of this? We're seeing sort of these traditional Web2 companies get into the metaverse. The reason I asked this question is it started from a really good conversation with my mom, actually, of all things. She asked me, what is the difference between the metaverse and the internet? And sort of my simplified answer, and I'd love your take on this, is in internet, I use your products and you make money because I watch ads. Mm-hmm. In the metaverse, my NFT is in your ads and you pay me, right? It's like the complete opposite, right? Somewhere, somebody has a Bored Ape that is now being sponsored by Adidas. What are the implications of that for that owner? So maybe talk to me a bit about your take on what is Adidas doing here? What are they thinking? What's the move? What's the play?
Sure. So see, just like in the real world, we need to wear clothes. Or let's take a simpler example. I'm in my home and what you see behind me is a wallpaper. I had to buy that. And then somebody came and plastered it on my wall. Now, when I buy a home or I build a home in the metaverse, I would need the same things there also. Because if I'm going to spend more time in the metaverse home, the virtual home that I have, I want it to look nice. So I'll have to buy a painting and put it up on the wall. That painting has to be an ERC20 token, for example. It can't be a regular GIF that I pull in. It has to be supported in the metaverse. Most common standard is going to be an ERC721, a non-fungible token. So that would force me to buy virtual clothes as ERC721s, virtual shoes, a virtual car, a virtual painting for my home, and then I would take that into the metaverse with me. So just like you go into a shop today and buy physical shoes, you would go into a store in the metaverse and buy virtual shoes so that your virtual avatar is not roaming around without shoes. So it's going to be the same thing. These companies now will sell you virtual versions of their product. There are already people selling you furniture there, paintings there, clothes there, and it's just going to get more. You'll soon buy cars there because you'll have to otherwise walk in the metaverse. So you'll have to buy a car to go faster. So you actually pay to buy that car. I know it sounds quite silly to some people, but that's the way we are going, right?
Yeah. Well, for those of us who grew up playing things like Sims or Minecraft, like, is it that silly? I don't know. I don't think it is. I think it actually makes a lot of sense. I think what's silly about it is that it's like something we're actually getting to experience. It feels a bit surreal. So we have this metaverse thing. I can buy shoes in the metaverse. Am I going to be able to hire cybersecurity professionals in the metaverse? Talk to me a little bit about that. What do you have any plans in the metaverse? Are you is there an office? Do you have a virtual card? Like what does that professional services look like over the next 5 to 10 years in the metaverse?
Sure. So I'll give you an example that if you've seen the movie Inception, so in that the main character is basically somebody who protects you in your dreams so that somebody doesn't come there and get your secrets out of your head. Well, kind of the same concept is going to happen in the metaverse because now you can consider the dream version of Inception to be you in the metaverse. So what happens if two people walk up to you in the metaverse and start hitting you? Maybe you'll need to hire a private security guard to protect you. Or people could come there and try to steal from you. So you need to hire an armed guard to protect you from that. So I'm kind of thinking almost every problem that we face in the real world slowly will come into the metaverse. Like maybe the coronavirus will reach there. So you would actually have a computer virus which could infect you and kill you in the metaverse. Now it all depends upon how different companies build the metaverse. So as of right now, there are different people doing it differently. Facebook has a vision, Microsoft has another vision, Roblox has another vision. Every one of these have their own visions, right? Epic Games has a different vision. Decentralized is doing something else. Axis is doing something else. So we've got to see how many of these are actually going to last out in the future, because then we may very soon have a time where you are actually moving from one metaverse to another. Moving from Facebook, going to decentralized, there may be trains and aeroplanes taking you from one to the other. So, I mean, I'm wondering to see what kind of things are going to happen. But I believe whatever we see in the real world is going to happen in the metaverse.
Yeah, that is a really interesting idea, that almost having these cyber illnesses or these viruses that get unleashed. COVID in the metaverse, better watch out. Make sure you get plenty of sleep and rest, or your NFT
or you
might be sick and die.
Yeah, you need to have your antivirus there. Somebody's put an interesting question. Yeah. How is any of this different from what happens on games and has been happening for the... I'll tell you, like I said, the metaverse is not a new concept. I was using it in 2003 in Second Life. The only difference is the technology is getting better and we are getting better headsets. So it looks better. It feels better. Like Second Life never felt very real. You could always make out it's not real. But now the way graphics are moving, the way those Oculus and other kind of headsets are improving in technology, it feels more real. That's the only difference. Otherwise, it's the same, which has been there for, at least I've been seeing it since 2003, which is about what, 17, 18 years. It's just the technology and graphics are getting better. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure who asked that. I can't read the name, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, ARVR has never really taken off. Do you want to comment on that?
So it's a matter of the pricing, actually. If the headsets are very expensive, then not too many people are going to buy it. And secondly, if they're too clunky, right, they're too big. So even if you look at cell phones, I mean, when we first bought cell phones, they were a lot clunkier and they didn't have too many features in it, right? They were not smartphones, they were feature phones. But the real growth of cell phones came when they became smaller and they became smart, and we could suddenly access, say, a camera on it and internet on it and email on it. So similarly, I believe that if this could be a headset where I could just wear specs and I don't have to buy this big thing and put it on top of my head, and it's not very costly, I think it would completely change the world. So we need to really see that technology coming in, like what Google Glass was trying to do. If they're able to and light to wear. So I guess that's what we need to wait for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the technology is better, so the immersive experience better, but it's also the blockchain having the ability to create sort of these micro financial economies, right? These value exchange networks that the metaverse... We might have lost Rojas, so let's give him a second to join.
I'm here. Are you able to? I can hear you.
Perfect. Excellent. Then I will just keep asking the question. So, we talk about this technology is improving, but I also think it's having the ability to create value exchange networks because of these decentralized applications is another big thing that kind of separates Web 2 and Web 3 metaverse, because it's one thing to play a game in VR. It's another thing to make money playing that game in VR and being able to take that money and change it to a different currency and essentially have commerce on chains. So I think this is a good transition to another question that came from the audience a bit further up, and it's about Web 3 and games. So they ask, are there games that are also Web 3 or are they in Web 2? And are there NFTs that are stored in Web3? So a quick caveat to this, I was in Miami Decentricon this last weekend at NFT conference, and one of the big themes that just seems to be so predominant is these play-to-earn games. This entire gaming economy, I mean, a lot of these games are only a couple years old, and some of them already have multi-billion-dollar market caps. I mean, if you look at Gala Games has a higher market cap, to my knowledge, than Compound, right? The lending protocol. It's been around forever. So maybe talk to me a little bit about play-to-earn games and the difference between Web3 and Web2 gaming.
Sure. So I'd first like to say that I'm not much of a gamer, but from what I understand, Web3 is still a concept. Just like Web 2 is also a concept and Web 1 is also a concept. It's not a technology. It's not like at one time all the websites ran on Web 1.0 technology. No, it's a concept. So a Web 1.0 represents a time when most of the websites were static, simply one-way information being given, and kind of like people putting brochures on the internet. Then we moved into the user-generated content, which is what we call Web 2.0, where people like you and me started creating content and putting it on social media, and other people started consuming content created by people. And you had few large companies controlling this data. Now, Web3 is supposed to be the world where we are supposed to have decentralization, and we are supposed to see people being able to control their content. But you know what? I don't know if that's ever going to become a reality. Because at the end of the day, we've got to realize that on the one hand, where a Facebook makes money from our content, they also have a lot of cost with it. They actually need to hold this data. Like today, if you go to YouTube, every video that we create goes onto YouTube, but it costs them money to host that video. Who is going to pay that cost? So if you really expect all this to become decentralized, then you as a user will need to start paying for all this. Are you ready to do that? So if you are not ready to pay a few thousand rupees, maybe a year, to keep your videos online, well, then you are going to have to live in a world where the Googles of the world control that data. So I'm not very sure Web3 is ever going to be true, because the economics don't make sense to me. We've not really seen successful examples of data storage happening in a decentralized fashion. So let's see how IPFS plays out. Let's see how projects like Filecoin pay out. And then we'll probably reach a world where we can talk about Web3. I think right now it's too far into the future. My personal opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's fair. I do some work in data analytics, and we're building products at some of the DAOs I work at. And one of the big problems we're running into, which is exactly what you just touched on, is sort of this compute layer, or this data storage layer. There's just not a ton of great options, right? It would be comparative to kind of like an AWS or a Microsoft Azure, where these platforms let us scale quickly and have data stored places, but there's not really a good scaling solution right now in the blockchain space. It's very difficult to store data on chain. You see that with NFT projects, like the metadata. So how are you going to build an application on it, right? So some of these video games, I don't think people realize, which is what you're alluding to, many of these Web3 video games are being designed for the most part largely Web 2. A traditional centralized server, they might be using Amazon, they might be using Google, or some other sort of hosting service. So I think like the big challenge there is, making that leap. And if it is possible, I think we're going to be in sort of Web 2.5 for quite a while.
Quite true.
So, all right, I know we're approaching time here. So I want to talk to you a little bit about DAOs, and then maybe leave just some white space at the end in case other people have questions. For those in the audience, obviously a DAO is this decentralized autonomous organization. What does that even mean? Well, it's a decentralized community. They're self-organized. It's individuals that are interacting and coordinating and conducting commerce mostly on chain, right? Working in Discord in the metaverse. So how do you see DAOs changing your work?
Sure. So I read this definition of a DAO some time ago, a very interesting definition. A DAO is an internet community with a shared bank account. That's like the most brilliant definition I've heard of that. So it's basically a question of people who have a shared interest come together in a DAO. So like a bunch of people would come together, who came together recently and tried to bid on some version of the US Constitution. And of course they lost the bid. But then what it basically means is it's temporary communities of funds being created for different interests. So personally, I'm not part of any DAOs as of right now, but I do see them becoming important as money becomes more and more social. So today we are in a centralized world where there are a few entities who run the mutual funds and the other ways, and people invest in them. But as more and more people start to take control of their money, we're going to see more and more DAOs coming up for specific interest groups. So some people who want to invest only in environmentally beneficial projects could come together and form a DAO and look at certain kinds of investments in that. I'm not part of any of them yet, But I think they're really important, and we're going to see a lot more action on the DAO front. It's just that DAOs, again, there's a lack of standardized templates, and that's what scares me about a DAO. I'm reading about the DAO, it tells me this is how it's going to work, but how do I trust it? Because I still remember the world's first DAO being hacked and the Ethereum breaking. So how do I trust this new DAO platform? So till a time comes where we have a lot of these templates available and we can verify the code and make sure that they make sense, I would be a little apprehensive getting in. I don't put my money into any DAO because I just don't trust their technology enough.
Yes, DAOs are very, very new and very early. I love that definition. Internet community with a shared interest and bank account. I'm definitely going to use that. Much more concise and to the point. You said something very interesting, and I want to pull on it a little bit. You said when money becomes social. So another thing that I've heard before and that I've said is culture is currency. Mm-hmm. So when you say money becomes social and I say culture becomes currency, you know, what do you mean by that? What is social about money? Why is money social? What do you mean by that? Can you expand on that for our audience?
Right. So say today when you invest, what do you look at? So you listen to some influencer or some financial expert who says something, and then maybe you try to follow that. Or then you go to a mutual fund which is run by a so-called expert. But when money goes social, it's like just like you get a notification that your friend has posted a photograph and you go there and click the like button. Now imagine if you see that your friend has invested in a particular asset and you click a button and you immediately buy that asset. That's what we mean by money going social. Secondly, on the fly, you can join a DAO of people and invest together in something. So let's say there's this new property coming up in an upcoming town, and you can see that 20 of your friends are part of it. You click a button, put some money, and you become the 21st person, and you get together and buy something together. That's what I mean by money becoming social. So today, what is social are videos, text, images, audio files. Tomorrow, money goes the same way, where when you click like, you end up buying a particular financial product. That's what I mean by money going social.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I really like that concept. Okay, so we've talked about a lot. I'm wondering do you know of any examples of cybersecurity DAOs, or are there any DAOs in particular that you think are promising? I know you mentioned these DAOs are very young. There's not a lot of standardization. You yourself are personally not invested or involved in any DAOs, but are there any that you saw that have kind of sparked your interest or, you know, has potential in terms of a cybersecurity DAO? Just as an example, I know there's no, not at all, huh?
I'm not aware.
Yeah, I know there's like a Lex DAO is a DAO for like attorneys and lawyers. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting to see sort of these special interest groups pop up in this space. Where do you think is going to be sort of the next innovation within DAOs, right? So like we have a lot to figure out and standardize. In your mind, what is sort of that tipping point where you're going to say, okay, yeah, these DAOs are legitimate. They're a form of business that can be used to create value for their community. They're something that I feel comfortable interacting with for commerce. What's that tipping point look like, and when do you think that tipping point is going to occur?
I think what I'm waiting for is templates, where it's easy for people to create a DAO and understand the template. That's not happened yet. So that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for templates. Like one of the reasons that Binance has become so popular is that there are templates available, and it makes it very easy to create smart contracts and tokens on Binance Smart Chain. Now, another reason, Solana is beginning to do well, because there are products like Sol Minter which make it very easy. They give you a user interface, you click a few buttons and you can create your own token. That's the kind of thing we need in DAOs. Is there going to be a trusted entity or an open source community which gives you an ability to click a few buttons and create a DAO without worrying about the security implications or without worrying about the coding? So if that happens, I think DAOs would pick up overnight, but that's not happened yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The sort of the governance tooling is very new in this space. There are a handful. You have things like Aragon and Dalhousie, and I believe Snapshot is an off-chain voting system. But even yesterday, I was looking into some of those, and they're rather difficult to navigate. The user experience could be better. The UI is a bit complex. So I agree. I think that, I personally think DAOs are very promising, but I know something that myself I spend a lot of time on is exactly what you're talking about, this governance, these templates, for these processes. Like, how exactly do we operate decentralized but still be efficient enough to actually coordinate and get things done and not create redundant work streams, not create security breaches. It's a difficult sort of challenge. So I know we only have a few minutes left. I want to actually ask you a little bit about your personal work here. I know you're working on a lot of things. You're working on several sort of crypto projects. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what you got going on?
So what I'm most excited about is the Human Talent NFT project, where we're trying to help people monetize their future services. So let's take an example of so where this idea came. There were two things that got this idea to me. One was a Croatian tennis player. Earlier this year, she said that she's going to auction a piece on her shoulder where you can get your brand tattooed on her shoulder. And being a tennis player, every time she plays, the TV cameras would pick up your brand and you would get publicity. I like that idea, but the problem is you just have two shoulders, right? So after two, what are you going to sell more to monetize your talent? Second is there are certain religious communities where if you can't afford education, higher education, somebody pays for it, and in return you give them an X amount of your lifelong income. Again, a good idea, but very difficult to enforce such an agreement. So I thought, how is it that we can help talented people to monetize their talent, or maybe pay for education without taking loans and pay back in a way which is easy for them to deliver? So that's what led to the birth of the Human Talent NFT. So the logic is very simple. Let's say you are a doctor and you want to go for your master's and become a surgeon, but you can't afford it. So you could tell people today that I'm selling you one NFT of mine, which is equal to one surgery that I will perform. And I will do this surgery for you in the future. So maybe 10 years from now, if you need that surgery. But you pay me a small amount today. I will use that amount to pay for my education. I become a surgeon, and few years later, you can redeem that surgery. Either sell it to someone else or get the surgery done on yourself. So that's the vision that we have. We've started with our first batch. We've got 15 really super talented people, and they're from different areas. So someone's a patent analyst, somebody else is a social media influencer, somebody is a growth hacker. So they're different people, and they are monetizing against future deliverables. So you pay today and say buy their post, say an Instagram post. And a year from now, when they're a lot more popular than they are today, you could encash that, or you could sell that NFT to someone else. So that's a project I'm really excited about. So we go live. Our first NFT sale is on the 18th of December. I hope it goes well, and I'll come back to you and tell you how it went.
Yeah. 18th of December, Rojas dropping the alpha on this call. Write that down. So I think I have first off, that is incredibly interesting. Second off, very serious question. So how much will it cost for you to tattoo my lazy lion on your shoulder?
So unfortunately, nobody in the world really wants to see me on TV. So you probably won't get much returns on that. So you've got to be like, some good-looking young person who people would want to see on TV. Then probably you'll be able to sell the tattoo space on your shoulder.
Sure. Joking aside, though, with this sort of concept, the use case that comes into my mind, and I'm from the U.S., so this is a bit context specific, but in this country, one of the big issues we're having is student debt and this tuition inflation issue. And there's a lot of economic and political reasons for that we don't need to get into. But basically, when you tell me about this idea, like, am I going to be able to borrow against my future success and buy an NFT to go to college? Am I understanding that correctly?
You are. So in fact, there's a friend of mine in the US, he's a physician, and he's actually been doing this for quite some time now, where he goes to medical schools and he identifies really bright students, and then he and a group of other people pay the fees, and then they take back by way of a percentage of the earnings of that physician in due time. In fact, they even get the physician insured against death and against disability. So they're protecting their investment in that way. They've actually been doing this for several years now, and it's worked out really well. Nobody defaults. So I think, if you feel this is a major issue in the US, please do talk to your communities about this and let them approach us, and we could maybe monetize their talent for them, and they would be able to raise money for college without taking student debt.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely need to talk more offline about that. I think there's definitely a demand and opportunity there for your project to really positively affect some of those challenges. So I want to go to a question in the audience related to this. So this comes from Sumti. So it says, you said human talent NFTs, but how does the contract enforce sort of that future income? So how can it be determined? And I think what they mean by this question is, how is that contract immutable and legitimate, right? Like if I say I'm going to make $200,000 5 years from now, okay, awesome. How do you verify that?
Sure. So that's not how it works. So let's take an example. Today, when you go to a social media influencer and you pay them money and they make an Instagram post for you, that is protected by the standard contract law. You enter into a legal agreement, which can be digitally signed, and you are buying that post. You pay the money, they make the post for you. Exactly the same concept. So the doctor is not saying he's going to give you 10% of his income. No. He's going to give you one surgery. Or let's not go to doctors yet. Let's start simple. Today, when you buy an NFT in an influencer, the influencer is saying, look, today I'm at 100,000 followers and I will sell you one post at $100. A year from now, I will probably be at 200,000 and my post value would have gone to $500. But you are buying my post today at 100, and you can encash it at whatever is the current price a year or two from now. So you're not really going in for anything very complicated. You're entering into a regular contract just like every influencer in the world today already does. The only difference is you are going to encash this in the future rather than today. And secondly, you can sell it to someone else, which today you can't do. Because today when you go to an influencer, the post comes out instantly. Now you're able to buy the post today and sell it in the future, or redeem it in the future a year or two down. So it's just the same logic of today, but future deliverables. So it's not like you're getting a percentage of someone's lifelong income. That is not easy to enforce at all. So our NFTs are very simple to understand. So what I would recommend to you is keep following us on Creator, and we've started doing live streams with the different people who are issuing NFTs. So today we had 4 of them speaking. Over the next few days, we have a few more. Listen to them, understand what the NFT is, and you'll absolutely love the concept.
I feel like we need to have another conversation where we just talk about this human talent NFT project more in depth.
Absolutely.
We only have a few minutes left, but I want to kind of leave this thought with you to sort of react to very quickly. In my mind, it almost kind of sounds like you're doing options trading with talent, where I sort of have this ability to purchase your success at a fixed price, right, that I can sell in the future, right? It's almost like this options trading for talent, right? Is that a fair comparison?
Call it futures trading. So options are a little different from futures. An option is only a right but not an obligation. In this case, it is an obligation. So I'd call it futures in people, human futures.
Very interesting. Human futures, everyone. And that project is dropping December 18th. Mark your calendars. We have just about 5 minutes left. Is there any other questions in the audience that anyone wants to ask? Just looking at the chat here to see if anything comes in. All right. We must have done a fantastic job explaining this stuff, because we do not have a lot of questions coming in. So Rojas, what would you like to kind of end with? What do you want to say to your followers, either about your project, about the metaverse? What are you excited about?
Sure. So I think there are a lot of exciting things coming in crypto in 2022, but just be careful that even though you may be bullish on a particular sector or a particular crypto, there's a valuation at which it makes sense. So for example, I'm a fan of the Avalanche project, and I've been speaking about it for quite some time, but the price has already gone up quite a bit. So it may not be a good investment. The project is still good. So a lot of people say Solana is a brilliant blockchain. Yes, it's good, but that doesn't mean the price is going to go up forever. So whenever you make purchase decisions on the cryptos that you're buying, please remember everything comes with a timeline too. So a project may be good, but if it's already overvalued, don't get in, because you're just going to end up losing money. So I hope you develop that savviness to decide and understand the difference between what's a good investment and what's a good project. They're not necessarily the same thing. That's what I like to end with.
Just one thing, if it's okay if I'm jumping in now. Sorry for jumping in late. Just one question.
I can't see you, but
yeah, just a second.
Unless you also decided to go anonymous.
No, I think my face is clearly, like, I've used my identity. Certain people know and see the face. So what I actually wanted to ask you is, you spoke about identities and like how real life sort of behaviors are panning out in the metaverse as well when you use the desync example. So I wanted to sort of touch base on how, so today, let's say I am an entity, a pseudonymous entity on the metaverse. How can I go and interact with another pseudonymous entity in a way where I can, in a trustworthy sort of fashion?
Well, I would
how can I pick and
recommend,
choose?
Yeah, I would say look like a man, don't look like a lady. Because if you look like a woman, a lot of people will come to harass you. So unfortunately, you have to probably get an avatar which looks like a man. And that's the way you stay safe today. But I'm hoping as metaverses improve, maybe at that time we will have some way of linking people, and you will have verified people. Like that was a good example Timothy gave of, the blue ticks coming in the metaverse. It's not happened yet. So at a time when, let's say, the platform verifies identities, at that time you'll probably be able to trust people and you can believe that they are who they claim to be. As of right now, it's a complete crazy place. So I'd strongly recommend, don't look like a woman on the metaverse. A lot of people will harass you.
Makes sense. Also between men, let's say two men, like one fraudster coming in, how do I know that it's, one immediate thing that sort of like I was thinking about in the background was, what if everyone were to like connect their wallets of sorts, and we can go using the public sort of address, we're able to view anything. Anyways, we're able to view an Etherscan, right? So what if I'm able to validate that and say, oh, because this person has n number of transactions, maybe this person is more trustworthy. Can I use that as a bias? And I know it's not
yet,
it's a
because
good way to go about it, but
you would be able to verify identity with a public key of, say, a wallet, if that person has linked the two in a verifiable manner. So like in the real world, when we use digital signatures, there are government authorized certifying authorities, and they actually verify your identity documents and then link you with a public key. So till that happens, no, we can't use wallets. We need some kind of a trusted entity to do this for us. So maybe at a time when Aadhaar cards are linked to our metaverse identities, maybe that'll work. Come on, we've linked Aadhaar to almost everything. Why not link it to the metaverse, right? Maybe that'll happen sometime.
Sounds interesting. It's fascinating to think about Aadhaar being linked all the way up to metaversal identity. Very interesting. And I was about to ask, what if Coinbase or one of these centralized exchanges actually jump in and say, we'll offer that also as a service? And
that makes sense, because they do your KYC. So yeah, I would probably trust them. An exchange which does KYC with your physical documents, I'm sure his identity.
I feel like we're going to have a Rojas, we're going to have a second event where we talk about human talent NFTs more, as well as this whole notion of how to conduct pseudonymous commerce, right? This is something I'm experiencing right now, doing DAO to DAO business. How the heck am I supposed to enter into some sort of a business agreement if all I have is your Discord ID and, you know, your pudgy penguin picture, right? It's very difficult. Obviously, you know, we can just transact on chain, and then we have this trustless sort of system in place. But there's so much more from that contract perspective to consider other than just that pure financial transaction, right? So we're definitely going to have to talk more about this. I think the audience would really enjoy hearing some of your thoughts further. We are at top of the hour. Rojas, do you want to close us out with any last thoughts?
No, that's it. I just want to tell people, be careful when you invest in crypto. There are a lot of things you need to consider. So just keep that in mind. A good project is not always a good investment.
Yes, please do your own research, not financial advice. And might be good to, you know, it's always difficult to time the market, but if something is parabolic and going on a bull run and just dropped on Coinbase and is shooting up, you might want to wait a few days and see where that price goes before you, you know, kind of ape in all the way, as the crypto world likes to say. All right. Well, Kriti, I don't know if there's anything else you want to do or have any closing thoughts, but this has been a fantastic conversation today, Rojas. And I hope we get to talk again.
Looking forward to that. See you guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, everyone.